Hello, all. Welcome to the Man Sports Fan Podcast. I'm your Schultz. I'm your host, Phil Schultz. It is late here on a Tuesday night. Not for me in Denver, but for you in Wisconsin. We're so happy to be back with you. Double digits in episodes. Episode number 10. How you boys feel?
I'm your Fremming, and we got to double digits. I think that's an accomplishment. So
It is huge. You are a Schultz, named after Pastor Schultz, who officiated our wedding. So I appreciate you and
much love,
Mark Schultz.
What was your rating of Mark Schultz's wedding ceremony / sermon?
Oh, he nailed it. I give him a 10 out of 10 just because he brought up fantasy sports within the speech.
And he really loves fantasy sports. No, he doesn't. He does not like those. I wish he listened to the pod. He would be so happy to get a shout out. Maybe I'll make him listen. Hey, we're happy to be back. Great weekend of college basketball. March Madness really truly is the best. It writes itself. Watch more of the women's tournament than I ever have. That's been good as well. Caitlin Clark, Iowa got a scare the other night. But let's talk Wisconsin Badgers basketball, as we always do. Badgers played late on a Friday night in Brooklyn, New York, and we might as well not have shown up for the game. It did not go well. Wisconsin loses to James Madison 72-61. Badgers a 5 seed, James Madison a 12 seed. As you're watching, and maybe even just after the fact, we're 5 days, right? Maybe 4 days in the morning now. What is your reaction? Why did we lose?
Why did we lose? I don't know if we have enough time for all of the reaction here on that, but I think everything from turnovers to poor shooting, you name it, I think top to bottom, just a dismal performance. You can look back and scrap that one in the memory book, I think, for Badger basketball, and maybe I'll elaborate a little bit more on my feelings moving forward here. But right now I think it's tough. It's tough to just see the season go down that way, and I think still feeling some feels about it. And specifically, I don't know if we break down the game, but it just night and day from what we saw at the Big Ten tournament. And it was late at night. We played like it was late at night. We played like nothing like a 5 seed at all. I will definitely call this one, us beating ourselves. I do not believe it was an upset in that sense, because I think we beat ourselves. I don't think James Madison beat us. And clearly you saw in the second round against Duke, James Madison is decent, right? But they're not anywhere, at the caliber to play with those higher level teams like Duke. So, just a really disappointing way to end. And, for I think, be at least about a handful of different Badger players in their careers, whether they're transferring or graduating, et cetera, or maybe going to the NBA. So I'll pass it to C. Smith, but just a total bummer. That's not how you want to end the season at all.
That was a eulogy.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate it.
I feel sad after listening to that. It was really disappointing. It just comes down to lack of preparation and execution. Like, it just felt like we were not ready for their pressure defense. As Frems, 19 turnovers is insane. And we just weren't competitive. We had that one little stretch in the second half where we started to make a comeback. Klesmit missed that layup that just sat on the rim, and they came down and hit a 3 to make it a 9-point game. That's all she wrote. But just playing in the Big Ten, we know Big Ten's a physical league, and I thought that, that was kind of the big thing with James Madison. They're going to come in, they're going to be physical, they're going to guard you tight. But we played teams like that. Illinois does that, Rutgers does that. I just felt like we'd be ready for it, and clearly we overlooked them and didn't think that they could bring it to that level, and it just shell-shocked us the entire first half, and we just dug a hole we couldn't get out of. I was trying to think of a time when the Badgers really didn't show up for a tournament game. And the most recent one that comes to my mind was when we played Ole Miss and we played Marshall Henderson, and he just went off, and we just sucked that day. But it's rare for the Badgers to look like that in the tournament. We're usually super competitive. We've talked about it. They usually win their first game. So this is definitely a buzzkill, and everyone was picking this upset as the 12-5. I was on record saying I didn't see it, thought we'd win by double digits. And we played our worst game of the year. Chucky played bad, Storr played bad, Wall played bad, Blackwell played bad. Klesmit played well, Crowell did okay. And we had no one step up in the moment. So just disheartening, especially coming off the Big Ten tournament, but also makes me wonder, did that play a factor, playing those 4 games against really good teams and then trying to come back? So, yeah.
I mean, it is. Yeah, I think, being in the Big Ten tourney, playing really hard, playing really smart, locked in. I mean, for us to show this way was disappointing. You got to give JMU some credit. Feels like too, they played really physical. They were grabbing. I mean, they were, yeah. I think, in maybe a regular game fouling, but if any of us have watched the tournament, we know that the officiating, they let things go. And so we didn't adjust to that. And, you go for 6 for 16 on layups. Storr probably had one of his worser games of the year. He didn't even have a stretch where he made really good plays in a row. He might have one good play here and there. Like Chris said, 19 turnovers. Brian said it too. They had 27 points off those turnovers. James Madison led by 1 point at 17. I think that's unacceptable for how good this team has played. And you come to the tournament and that happens. It does put a pretty sour taste in all our mouths. And yeah, I don't think we expected that. I think if we would have lost in a different way, it would be disappointing, but it wouldn't feel like it does. It wouldn't feel kind of like, man, what actually just happened there? So based on all that, we've talked a lot about Greg Gard the last month here. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of different opinions thrown out. I mean, pre-Big Ten tournament, or even, I guess, pre-Rutgers in the Big Ten. Kind of like, man, what is Gard's future? There are a lot of fire Gard truthers out there. And we were kind of like, yeah, I think we were kind of split on it. After the Big Ten tournament, we're like, yeah, Gard, super safe. Our team played awesome. We looked great. And then James Madison happened. And if any of you read the tweets, any of you are following any of the news, I mean, this was maybe the most media coverage, most tweets I've seen around Gard being fired that I've ever seen. In your opinions, guys, what should the Badgers do with Greg Gard? Do you keep him? And if you did fire him, let's say you did fire him, who would you want to replace him with?
Yeah, I was texting one of our fellow Whitewater guys, Wesley Stuckert, during the Badger James Madison game, and just spelling it out throughout the game, like, this is it, like, we don't win, they're gonna fire Gard. Like, I've been on the fire Gard train before. This Big Ten tourney kind of, I think, clouded my vision and made me believe again a little bit. I think it's a pretty good fake out overall. Just to see us show up that way. I mean, didn't get into the X's and O's of the game, but Chris, you said it there, and I mean, with the doubling and the pressure, like, how are we not ready for that? It was pretty clear. You passed it into the post, they doubled you, right? And we didn't have a plan for that. It's like we weren't ready for that. I mean, Phil, you hit on it. 6 of 16 for layups. Like, that's mental at some point. Tyler Wall just completely looked like he forgot to play basketball the last 5 games or so of the season. And I even got on Connor Season's Instagram and just kind of followed him the last week or so. And I mean, just looking at the guy, like, he's going to be a star somewhere. I think he's going to be a stud somewhere. We know he's transferring now. I think he's going to show up somewhere and perform. And it just makes me think, like, Gard wasn't able to get these guys to perform at their highest level consistently. And I think we saw it in different moments. But that you got to do it consistently in D1 basketball and then at this stage. So, yeah, definitely out on Gard at this point. I just think this is going to leave a really sour taste for a lot of people. And like, I think even how we lost, like, I think if it's a close loss, if James Madison just, kind of pulls a Yale, we were talking about Yale before we started here, like, they just shoot the ball really well. And we're like, wow, okay, we're kind of got unlucky. Or like you said, Chris, with that Ole Miss game, like a player gets hot. This wasn't a player getting hot. This is just, we weren't there. If Max Klesmit doesn't get hot in that second half, this is a 20 to 30 point loss without a doubt. I mean, you can run the numbers on that, but I think Klesmit made something like 5 or 6 threes in that second half there. And without that, we're not anywhere close to this game. We're probably somewhere, 40 some, 50 some points, and it's really ugly. So I think the score is actually deceiving when you look at it. Max Klesmit saved us. He's the only guy who seemed to have any confidence in that second half to really step up and score the basketball. To your point, or your question, Phil, TJ Otzelberger, both these guys have Whitewater ties. A little biased to our, our faithful, the purple here, but yeah, TJ
as we should be.
As we should be, UW. He was a former player at UW Whitewater in the late 90s, and I think 98 to 01, he was a point guard for Whitewater. Now he's the head coach for Iowa State. I think he's already recruiting Wisconsin guys right now very effectively. I think he'd be a really exciting person. He may bust out of every single polo he tries to put on, but I do think he'd be an exciting hire. And the other guy right now who is in the Sweet 16, another Whitewater guy, assistant coach in the early 2000s, Nate Oates for Alabama right now. So I think some guys that have Wisconsin roots who have proven to do it on the big stage, and who I think can probably recruit a lot better in this NIL era. And so those are a couple guys, very biased, like I said. But yeah, Otzelberger, born in Milwaukee, Thomas More High School. I mean, these are guys I think that would feel like they're coming home in a lot of ways. So I think it would be pretty cool to get one of these guys.
Yeah, so I spent the last couple of days thinking about this, reading things, listening to podcasts. Where I'm at right now with Gard is I'm not ready to pull the plug yet. I want one more year. And the reason I want one more year is because we're coming back with a roster that should be pretty intact. I don't envision too much leaving beyond what we know at this time. We're bringing in 2 pretty solid recruits. I'm pretty sure that we'll get 1 or 2 bigs in the portal that should be able to help us. Like, I just think our roster is actually too good right now to give up on Gard. Because if we fire him now, basically, I'm assuming half the team would leave. You're basically, and I know in the portal age, you could probably rebuild your roster pretty quickly. But I'm kind of this mindset, like, let's see one more. And I know that's hard for probably some people to hear. And actually, the opposite take of that, I was listening to a podcast about John Calipari last night, and I can't remember who it was that said it. But he said, once you lose your fan base, no matter how good Gard could be good the next 3 years, but as soon as he has one more bad year, like those people are coming right back out. So I do think with a large majority of the fan base, Gard is never going to win them over. But I would like to see one more, just because I like the core that they have. I like the guys they're bringing in. I actually think they should be a top 10 to 15 team next year. So I want to see that. If they were to move on, which I don't think they will at this point, I'm sort of a homer and I like to stay in house, similar to what Frem said with the guys. But to me, Tony Bennett would be my first call. I know it's a similar play style, but he's proven to be a top 4 team in the ACC every year. He's won a national championship. He recruits Wisconsin well. I think it would be a great fit. And my second is actually on the staff. It would be Joe Krabanoff. I think he's going to be a really good coach. I wouldn't be shocked if we lose him to a mid-major at some point in the future, and potentially he could come back. But those are where I would be looking. I get your point on Otzelberger. I just think he's got such a good roster at Iowa State, and he keeps bringing in these kids. And I don't know why he would leave outside of money. Money would be the reason he would leave.
Well, could he bring him with? I mean, that's what
right.
we see now.
Yeah, maybe
basketball. Can he bring some guys with him? That'd be exciting.
Right. So I'm one more year on guard, and I want to revisit this question next year. But if he can't, I think next year they have to get to the Sweet 16 and they have to finish top 4 in the Big Ten. I think that's the way he keeps his job. If he doesn't, I think that's the time you move on.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth. I'm really in the middle of both of you, which is interesting. Like, I'd welcome a change, but I don't think it's dire. So us keeping Guard, like Chris said, I think our roster is still really good. I think Store will test NBA waters. I don't know if he transfers though. I mean, I actually think Badger Faithful really loved him. He just had games where he disappeared, and I think he knows he needs to work on stuff. But hey, this isn't a deep draft class. Go test your stock because you can see where you are, and those NBA execs will tell him what he needs to get better at. So I think that's why he's doing it. I think he'd only go if he was a first round, but you know, you never know. But I think he comes back if we want him back. Illinois and Purdue are going to lose key pieces next year. I mean, we're going to be up at the top. I'm actually not worried about that with Guard. Can we get to a Sweet 16? I mean, I think now Badger Nation more than ever feels it. Like, I bet some people didn't even realize that we haven't been back since, 2017.
7 years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people really realize that. And so if we get back to the tournament, which I think we would, I think we would play a lot better with a lot more urgency. I think the pressure would be on in a lot bigger way than I think that the players felt it this year. So if we did fire him, yeah, Otzelberg would be awesome. Wisconsin roots. I think another reason he would come back is with the Wisconsin roots, but man, you got a good thing at Iowa State. I don't know why you'd leave. I was talking to Chris about this other candidate, Steve Peichel from Rutgers. He's been an East Coast guy his entire life, so I don't think he'd leave. But he's in essence taken a very academic school in Rutgers and made them prominent in basketball, which is super cool. And I like the way he plays, a really aggressive play style. Feels like in terms of defense, he knows how to coach defense, which the Badgers have struggled at. Really this year especially, but even the last couple of years, it hasn't been as good. And again, Bo Ryan, he's the gold standard, right? It's hard to get to Bo Ryan status, but I think Steve Peichel does it. And yeah, we need to play a little bit more up tempo. And he obviously has recruiting chops. He has 2 top 5 players going to Rutgers next year. So I don't think he'd leave per se, but it's a bigger program than Rutgers. He would have a lot more resources. And Madison's an awesome place to play, so an awesome place to live. So, I think he could do some damage. The other guy that I thought about is this guy named James Jones, who is the head coach at Yale.
Who?
And again, I just think of academic schools, right? And Yale, obviously, higher than Wisconsin. But Wisconsin is still considered a public Ivy. So you get somebody like that. I mean, he's 60, he's a little bit older, but he's been really strong in the Ivy League. I mean, Yale's almost a lock every year to get to some postseason tournament, whether NCAA or NIT. So he's had really good teams. And if you look at their team this year, similar Wisconsin players in some ways. Tall, skinny, white guys. But what they had that we didn't was better shooters and better wings. So just a couple of names. I'm trying to remember, when was Jim Leonard let go? Because it's only been 4 or 5 days, right, since we lost on Friday. When was Jim Leonard let go? Or when did they hire?
I mean, it was a while. It took a couple weeks.
Okay.
Let me throw out one more name. So here's the thing with McIntosh is he has shown that he's obviously not afraid to make the move. He's also the guy that's going to go get the home run hire. So he's not, in my mind, he's not going to hire Joe Krabanoff, right? But the other name I'll throw out there is Greg McDermott. I think he's taken Creighton to a level. He's taken them basically as high as they can go.
Mm-hmm.
They're not Wisconsin in terms of you talk about resources. That would be a guy I would love to bring to Wisconsin.
Well, it was cool hearing about McDermott and Dana Altman when Oregon and Creighton were playing, because Dana Altman was at Oregon, or was at Creighton, and then went to Oregon. And those two are really close friends. And so, yeah, is it time for Greg McDermott, right? To take that next step, because man, he is a good coach. Creighton is always there. They know their style. I think that's the thing. Creighton has an identity. Does Wisconsin know who they are? Because it feels like every game is different. And we almost get out of our offensive flow so easily. And you ask yourself, well, why is that? And it just feels like we don't have the identity as a team, right? Creighton, what they're going to do is shoot a ton of threes. I think they took at one point against Oregon. I think they had shot 24 shots, 13 of them were threes or something crazy like that. I'm not saying that's necessarily how the Badgers should play, but that's an interesting name. I like it. We'll see what McIntosh does because, like you said, he's not afraid to go for the big hire. Also, it's only been 5 days, so I don't think Gard's safe. But like you said, Chris, got some good recruits, good roster next year. I think he gets one more shot. Any final thoughts on Gard?
Yeah, I don't disagree with the take that I think that they may have one more shot. This just kind of screams like what we just saw with Wisconsin football, and yeah, how we don't have patience to wait and see, right? And we're going for that bigger fish. We're going for that bigger name, reeling somebody in. I mean, people throw out even a name like Jay Wright. I mean, I think that's a little preposterous to think we could get him, but I wouldn't put it past us to try to get that big name to try to really change the tide here. I think, yeah, in college basketball, I mean, you only need a few guys to really change your program here. And getting the right coach in, I mean, we know NIL right now, that can flip a switch, right? And you can bring in some really electric players to all of a sudden now you're a top program in the country. So.
Yeah, my last point is I like Gard as a coach. I think he's a good coach. But I kind of agree that I don't know if he can ever take us to a Final Four. And I feel like that's the bar we need to set for ourselves. That's why I said, let's see one more year with this core roster coming back. Maybe they can make a run. But in terms of after that, trying to rebuild the roster, I don't know if he's that guy that can really take us deep into the tournament.
Obviously, things are happening beyond the scenes. Transfer portal already opened up, which is really stupid, but it's opening up during the tournament. I gotta imagine we go after a bigger couple, maybe a wing. We need to get bigger. I think we're a little bit stronger. It felt like that was lacking this year. Let's talk about the tournament just in general. Man, really fun as usual. Feels like there were some upsets, especially in the first round. You hear the word mostly chalk coming in through the second round to the Sweet 16, meaning all these tops, the best seeds or the best teams ended up kind of winning. Really, the Cinderella seems to be NC State in a way, right? Even though they're a Power 5, but 11th seed. Which team stood out to you the most this first weekend?
Yeah, I think it's easy to look at UConn. I think everyone has, I would imagine just out of a guess without knowing the stat line on it that most people have picked UConn to win the championship here. Houston, though, I think Houston does not get the attention or love they deserve. They played an extremely talented Texas A&M team. I was texting Chris because I think Chris did the same thing. Like, turn off the game, like whatever, is like a 9 or 10 point spread, and all of a sudden, like, here's Texas A&M like right on Houston's heels, tying the game at the end of regulation. Houston fouled out 4 players in the game, and I think they're the first team to win a game with fouling out 4 players since I think it was like 1987 or something. The stat line was. They just have amazing depth overall. I think to be able to like dig into their bench and finish a game like that, and there's their athleticism, their shooting ability. Kelvin Sampson has them really fired up. I think really gelling, and I don't see anyone stopping them in their side of the bracket. So Houston, I think Houston makes it to the championship game. Just after watching them again, I know they can get cold, right? I think Phil, that's your critique. Like, I know they can, miss shots. I think that goes for anyone though, but they're just like length, their ability to guard the basketball, their energy. I think Texas A&M was a really good team. Buzz Williams really had Texas A&M fired up to play, and I don't know if any teams can reach that level to play like that with them.
Yeah, so my team is Gonzaga. They first game played McNeese, who everyone's kind of picking as this trendy 12-5 upset, and they just absolutely blew them out of the water. I mean, McNeese had no shot. Gonzaga is this 5 seed that is uber talented, and it just took them a while to get going this year. So they roll McNeese, and then they play Kansas, and at halftime they're down 1. And I think in the second half, they outscored them by what they win by. They won by like 21. So they outscored them by 22 in the second half. I mean, they just dominated. So that's 2 dominating performances. And now they play Purdue, which is going to be a tough game. But I just think the way they won against teams that, like Kansas is obviously hurt, but those are 2 decent teams, or at least people thought they were decent teams. So they set themselves up into the Sweet 16. I think they said for the 9th straight year, I think is what ESPN said, which is insane. So kudos to Gonzaga. Like they kind of flew under the radar all year, but yet here they are on the second weekend.
Well, yeah, and they lost to St. Mary's in their conference final, and I think that's why kind of people looked at them and said, nah. And it's like, yeah, they actually turned it around, especially that second half of the year. They looked a lot better. For me, it's Iowa State, and I just enjoy watching them play. They're fundamentally sound. They play tough defense, but not in a hacking or overly physical kind of way that's borderline a foul every time or whatever. And they just hit clutch shots. Like, it's just so fun to see them play. You can tell they love playing with each other. There's kind of a camaraderie within the team. I think just because they're up and coming, and maybe it is just because of Otzelberger, right? The whitewater tie, but him popping out of his shirt. But it just feels like, man, Ames is like a college town that I think gets really up for basketball, maybe more than a lot of other even Midwest spots. So they've just been the most fun to me. So besides Kentucky and Wisconsin, which team was the most disappointing to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because we didn't have a ton of upsets, I think. Kentucky, definitely disappointing. The Badgers were disappointing. Yeah, I know. I don't want to take, I think, what I believe will be Chris's here. Yeah, digging into the memory bank here of who I think was the most disappointing. It gets kind of like looking at some of those teams that I wanted to win, and you know, that you pick them as an upset, like a Drake. I think Drake's a team that upset Indiana State, you know, in their conference tournament there, Missouri Valley, and you're like, okay, this is the team I can like hitch my wagon to. They're going to make a run. And seeing some of those, you know, quote unquote mid-major programs just not do anything, having less madness overall, I think that was maybe disappointing. Just not seeing some of these smaller schools be able to go further or do more. I think Oakland, was our you know, one shining underdog that really came up here. I don't know if you can really call North Carolina State. I mean, they got hot at the right time, I think, but they're coming out of a power conference. They have really good players still. So
to their credit, though, I think they played 5 games in 10 days.
correct.
Or something crazy, or maybe it was 6 games
7.
in 10 days. It was 7 games in 10 days.
So they won 5 in a row to win the ACC tournament.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. They're still Power 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, so for me, I have 2. Oh, sorry, friend. My first one's Auburn. I mean, I was on here last week saying I liked Yale. I didn't actually think they could beat Auburn. I thought they could hang with them, but Auburn just really choked at the end of that game. They had so many opportunities to win, and
they did.
Just were frantic and just didn't make good decisions. So that was one. The second for me is New Mexico. They were a trendy Sweet 16 pick. They were my Sweet 16 pick, which is one of I only lost 2 Sweet 16 teams. That was one of them. But they didn't even show up against Clemson. I mean, that game was not even competitive. And the Mountain West had a bad weekend. But that was the one team that I thought outside of San Diego State could make a little bit of a run, and they looked horrible. So those are the 2 that I'll go with.
Yeah, I mean, New Mexico was my team, and like you, Chris, I pick them the Sweet 16. And I mean, you just watched them, and it makes you realize, I should watch these teams. I shouldn't just read about them or assume things. Or it's like, it's coached by Richard Pitino. They're going to be good. And they couldn't play defense. I mean, it was actually, it was interesting to watch. They didn't, in terms of even spacing or how do I use my leverage against a guy on defense, they didn't know how to do that. Again, they're playing Clemson, who I think a ton of people overlooked, and starting all seniors or graduate seniors on their team. But yeah, I mean, New Mexico is a pretty disappointing one. And then I'm like you, Frem. I think I thought Drake would do a little bit more or look a little bit better. I thought there would be more upsets. But I think what you said, Frem, this was maybe last podcast or 2 podcasts ago, where you thought it would be more chalk of a tournament because you didn't think there would be as much parity because all of these, players in these smaller schools moving to bigger schools for NIL money, more exposure, getting better play because they're able to transfer it away. And I think your take was right. Like, I think these teams actually rounded out a lot more with transfers, and were able to be a lot more, I think more stable when they, hit a rut in a game. They could get a bucket because they had more experienced or better players than a lot of these mid-major teams.
Yeah.
In your eyes, was it a good tournament this first 4 days?
Well, I went on record by saying it's the best sporting event in the country. So yeah, I definitely think it's a pretty amazing, 4 days, those first 4 days, and all the excitement. I think we'll have to monitor this moving forward. I was just looking up a couple, the transfer portal for this upcoming year and then last year, and I'm looking at a couple of Bama's guys, Estrada and Nelson came from Hofstra, and I think it was North Dakota State. And it's like these are examples of these small programs are diluted. They don't have the same talent. So we're just going to have to keep an eye on that. You're going to maybe see more chalk to come in the future. I think we're going to see some really, really good basketball this weekend. You have some really big matchups here. I think that Gonzaga-Purdue game is going to be amazing. That whole bracket there, Creighton, Tennessee is going to be amazing. So chalk isn't always a bad thing. You can see some really great basketball with that. So I think that's the upside of it too, is just watching some really sound basketball to your point, Phil. Watching guys that are really gifted and are really connected and some really well-coached teams here. And hopefully some really outstanding games come down to the wire.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I agree. Like these sleepers, these Cinderellas are great when they keep winning, but at some point they're probably going to get blown out. So the fact that we have really good Sweet 16 matchups, I'm excited for. But yes, it was a good weekend because we got our moments, right? We got Jack Golke, who played D2 basketball and redshirted his freshman year at D2 college, didn't start until his 4th year in D2, and then transferred and hit 10 threes to beat Kentucky. I mean, to me, those are the moments that make it great. So whatever else happens, I don't really care.
Yeah, I think the only surprise was how big some of these blowouts are. Teams winning by 40, 50. That I don't think we've seen to this level. But, some team gets hot like Purdue at the end of a game and they're still hitting 3-pointers, with 6 minutes left. I against Utah State, I think that just happened a lot more this one. Hey, we're going to do something kind of interesting here. We're going to do a Sweet 16 draft. This was created by Chris Smith. So, Chris, I'm going to let you explain the rules to the audience, and then we'll do it live here.
All right, so we have a snake draft with the 3 of us. So we're going to draft 15 teams total instead of 16. But basically, if your team wins the Sweet 16 game, they get a point. If they win in the Elite 8 game, they get 2 points. If they win the Final 4 game, they get 3. If they're the national champion, they get 4. So between the 3 of us, we're all going to have 5 teams. Whoever has the most points with their teams at the end of the tournament will win. And maybe we'll let the viewers decide what we win or what the loser's punishment is. Not sure.
Okay. So Frem's going to go first, correct? And then me and then you?
Yep.
Taking one for the team, Chris. All right. Who is your first pick, Frem Dog?
Oh, that's tough. Yeah, I really want to go with some other teams. I'm gonna take the most obvious. I've learned this draft is chalk. I'm just gonna take UConn. I'm just gonna cross them off.
All right, Chris, and you're recording this, right?
I am. I got it going.
Okay, I like it.
And the thing is, when you take UConn, Frem, you don't even need an explanation. It's like, I'm going UConn.
Just whatever. I'm taking UConn.
I will go Purdue.
Oh wait, I got pick 2, Phil. Come on.
There you go. You already know.
I'm taking Purdue. Yeah, definitely taking Purdue.
You're the worst.
And it's because I have them picked as my national champion, and I think it's destiny.
I also think it's destiny. So you said I was second. This is so sad.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm gonna be flexible. I'm gonna roll. I'm gonna go.
Me too, though.
I do. I get back to back here. All right, I'll go Arizona as my next pick. And then I'm going to go Tennessee. Because that's the one that against Purdue, that's going to be an interesting matchup. And I think they'll beat Marquette. Or wait, who do they play?
Great.
They play Creighton.
They play Creighton. I think they'll beat Creighton.
Okay. I'm going to take North Carolina. I think they're set up well against Alabama. And then that game against Arizona is going to be tough. But I like them to at least get to that point.
Okay. Tipped my hand earlier. Houston. Pretty easy pick for me. And then, moment of truth here. I'm actually going to pick against you. I need somebody in that bracket down there. I'm going to pick against you, Phil. I'm going to go Creighton. Feeling the Creighton fever, and I really like their team. I really do. McDermott has something special there. Shireman and Ashworth, Cockbrenner, Alexander, those guys are studs, and they are veterans, and I'm really hoping it'd be sweet to see Creighton make the Final Four.
You like Doug McDermott as well as Greg.
Did I say Doug?
We love all the McDermotts.
We just love all the McDermotts. Yeah,
we do.
That's true.
I'm going to take Marquette because I like them to beat NC State. And then from there, if Houston gets upset, maybe they can get to the Final Four. So I'll go Marquette.
For me, so let me look here at the scores. Let me look at the games. I'm going to go with Illinois. Because while I think it's close, I think they're going to win. I think they do. And do I take the other team? Do I take Iowa State? Do I take that loser?
Just lock it in.
That's a good strategy, actually.
It is.
You know, I'm gonna do the strategy because I think either team could win. Where's the game played?
That's a great question.
That game is in Boston.
Okay, so not huge ramifications in terms of geography. I guess both are so close anyway.
So
but yeah, I'll go Illinois, Iowa State.
That's nice. That's good work. I'm going to take Duke. I have Duke in my Final Four, so I'm hoping that they can beat Houston and go on a mini run here.
And then I get 2 here to wrap it up.
Yep.
You do.
Well, I said all along, I think that this bottom left of this West bracket, I think is the weakest out there. I'm going to go Alabama. I think if I really do like North Carolina. I really like the experience on their team. But Nate Oates, I called him out earlier. They have some fun transfers on that team. They can score. I think that game is going to be first one to 100. And if they can win that game, I'm definitely thinking the opposite side is you, Phil, on Arizona. I like Bama to go to the Final Four if they can get past North Carolina. So Alabama. And then I got to take one more.
You get to take one more.
I get to. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it at this point. Well, I'm gonna just double down here. I'm not gonna go that way. I'm not gonna take Phil's strategy. I'm going to.
It's fine.
I'm gonna take NC State. Why not? I'm gonna roll the dice with NC State. I back Marquette, but I've also seen the bad side of Marquette where they stop shooting the basketball and, Colette gets, kind of bottled up. And North Carolina State's a very interesting team. And they got their big dude in the middle and they can shoot on the outside. And it took a lot, I think to get to this point, and let's roll the dice here.
You can't bet against DJ Burns, which is a perfect name for him, too.
That guy's the man.
He is awesome.
He was he is a cool guy. Like, you can just tell that.
All right, my last pick, I'm taking Gonzaga because I have Purdue, and I also just think Gonzaga is the most talented team remaining. So there's a chance they could beat Purdue, and if so, maybe they could get to the Final Four too. So Gonzaga as my last pick.
And I'm going to go, it's between Clemson and San Diego State. I think I'm going to go San Diego State. And I know for a lot of people, they would say that's stupid. Like, Clemson probably has a better chance to beat Arizona. right? More experienced team, some of those things. In my head, San Diego State is the most overlooked team because of who they're playing. And all of their guards are big. And I think they'll actually match up okay on the guards for UConn. Now, they don't have a 7-2 guy. They don't. And so we'll see how that goes there. But I'm going to pick them over Clemson just for the heck of it.
I like it.
I like it too.
Let me recap us then. So Frem out of the one spot here has UConn, Houston, Creighton, Alabama, NC State. I had the second pick. I took Purdue, North Carolina, Marquette, Duke, and Gonzaga. And Phil, at the turn, took Arizona, Tennessee, Illinois, Iowa State, and San Diego State. So Clemson, if they win it all, we're getting 0 points for them.
We should all be punished if Clemson wins.
Yeah, we should.
Well, again, Chris, you've created a cool draft and made games more fun. So thank you for doing that. He literally has created almost the coolest leagues I've been in is because of Chris Smith. And he wrote for RotoWire. He did all these things. He won't tell you that, but he did. I think you were he's actually in a league with famous people, which is cool, like actors. And anyway, Chris is cool. So thanks for doing that. Should be a fun. This weekend's also just as fun, like you said, Chris. The Sweet 16 games. It's all good matchups. So I think it'll be a really interesting 2 days here coming up. You know what else is coming up? Major League Baseball. And if you have T-Mobile Tuesdays, they give you MLB TV for free. So
huge.
If you do have T-Mobile, get that app because it's totally worth it. And that's not just for your phone, but for all devices. So pretty cool. Man, season starts Thursday.
Is that a paid advertisement there?
Let's say I'm gonna get T-Mobile on the horn.
I'm convinced. Should I switch to T-Mobile?
They should pay us.
Sponsorship going here.
They should pay us, and you should switch. Yes. Season starts Thursday. So exciting. Opening day. We all love it. We talked about our traditions. When are you watching Fever Pitch?
Tomorrow night. Wednesday night, baby.
Is Heather is she going to join you?
I bet she will this year. Just because it's on the podcast.
We could do a Zoom double date, or maybe I just third wheel.
Sure.
Where I also watch Fever Pitch.
We could both make popcorn. Eat it simultaneously.
Maybe we could do a podcast live while watching Fever Pitch. Our running commentary.
I hate to break it to you guys. I've already been watching Fever Pitch slowly at chunks of it. So
chunks of it. It's an hour and a half movie.
I'm an old man.
You gotta go. And you gotta go at your old pace.
Yeah, I can't watch it all at once.
Brian takes naps.
Yeah, let's take naps. It's confirmed.
Yeah. Well, hey, Brewers at Mets 12:10, and Cubs at Rangers 6:35. That's the games we're tuning into. Which player or team are you most paying attention to this season? Maybe outside of our own team, right? The Cubs for me and Chris, Brewers for Fremdog. Who's the team you're most paying attention to, and why?
I'm gonna go out there as a Brewer fan and say, we get into our predictions here for the season. The Cubbies. I'm super intrigued. Craig Counsell, I'm curious just what he does there and how he manages the team and how they do. And I'm tipping my cap here, but I think the Cubs are going to win the division, actually. I boiled it down, and Chris made a comment to me. We were doing our draft this weekend in person and I asked about the Cardinals, and I've heard some takes on the Cardinals, and looking at their roster, I'm just like, they're definitely not winning the division in my mind. And I don't think the Pirates and Reds have enough talent to put it together there. And in all honesty, I think the Brewers will be competitive, but I don't see them doing it. So who else could do it? I think the Cubs are the team that could do it, honestly. So I'm going to be pretty interested to see what's going on in Wrigley and keep an eye on that and just see how that team comes together. I think, bringing Belly back. I'm really interested about their pitching staff. I know I am now invested with Mr. Imanaga. Is that correct? So I'm now invested in a fantasy sense to watch him a little bit. So yeah, maybe watching the Cubbies and see how they're doing this season.
Love it. Hashtag bringing Belly back. I think we can get it going. For me, it is the San Francisco Giants. I'm so intrigued with what they did this offseason. Bringing in Jung-Hoo Lee, from overseas, signing Blake Snell. Like their offense is sneaky. It reminds you of all the Giants' offenses for the past 10 years, where you look up and down, you're like, there's not a lot of stars, but all of them can hit. So I think they're a team that can hang around in the division. I don't know if they can beat the Dodgers, but I do think they're a sneaky playoff team. I love their bullpen with Camilo Duvall and the Rogers twins. Their starting rotation, you got Logan Webb and Blake Snell are probably like two of the top 6 or 7 starters in the NL. I mean, I think they're a pretty sneaky team that I don't know if a lot of people are paying attention to. So I got my eye on San Francisco Giants, and I love AT&T Park.
Yeah, that park is awesome. All the West Coast parks, man, except for Anaheim, is cool. But they do have a huge hat outside their stadium, and that's kind of fun. For me, it's the Detroit Tigers because they're just so young and exciting, right? I don't know if they're going to win the division. The AL Central is pretty weak sauce. It's pretty much them and the Twins who are most in it in terms of the AL Central. Royals did make a lot of minor moves. So you never know about a team like the Royals, and they do have some younger bats as well that are kind of exciting. But what I like about the Tigers is they have this core group of hitters that are just exciting. It's Spencer Torkelson, it's Riley Green, it's Kerry Carpenter, it's Colt Keith. It's Javier Baez even. They have these players. Oh, Javier Baez,
he's
we
done.
like him. We just like him. We like him though. They just have these players that are young and seem to be ascending kind of at the same time. And then they have like a couple of like really interesting pitchers, and Tariq Skubal and Casey Mize. And they always put together a decent bullpen that is like pretty okay. So, you know, AL Central is not super strong, but the Tigers they always seem to do this every 5 years. They have this push where they could be good with a young nucleus, and often it goes wrong for them. But I hope that this team, and even just, I think, you know, following what they've done this year, this offseason, could be a surprise and could be fun to watch.
They also have Kenta Maeda and Jack Flaherty in the rotation.
That's right.
It's a good rotation.
Yeah. Now let's go to what we decided to do here is go through each division and give our projected division winners. And so I think we'll do that. And I think we could just each talk about each team. And I don't think we need to necessarily explain everything for why we chose a team, but I think just to give the audience a view of who we think is going to win each division. So we'll start with the AL West. Frem, who is your team that is going to win?
The Texas Rangers, reigning World Series champions. I think they're going to produce. I think the Mariners and Astros can both make the playoffs there as well. Very good teams. But I think their team is just loaded when it comes to offense. They got the 2 young rookies coming up. Chris has already talked up Wyatt Langford, and then they got Mr. Evan Carter as well. Got his name correct. I don't know why I want to call him something else. I think they're loaded. If they can get enough pitching to come together there, they got a bunch of injured guys that need to all come back, you know, between Scherzer and DeGrom and Molly. Like, they have a lot of guys. If they all, you know, come back and piece together there, I think they could have a really special team. So they just have to get through, I think, the first half of the season here. But yeah, I like the Rangers in the West.
Evan Carter, Aaron Carter's brother. No, maybe there's a relation. Do you guys remember Aaron Carter? Do you remember Aaron Carter?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
He once beat Shaq. I don't know if you know this.
Did he write a song about that?
He did.
Yeah.
Then he woke up from his dream. I'm picking the Mariners, and it's not because of their offense. In fact, I don't think their offense is great. I think they're going to struggle at times this year.
Except for Cal Raleigh.
Sorry, Cal, your boy. But I do love their pitching staff, and they did just lose Brian Wu to an injury, and it's elbow, so that scares the heck out of me anytime it's an elbow.
Boo woo.
Boo woo. But Castillo, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, I mean, it's a really good 4. Yeah. They have probably one of the top closers in baseball, and Andres Munoz. So I'm hoping that their pitching can carry them enough to where their shortcomings on offense are. And I'm just sort of a homer because I've always wanted the Mariners to win the division. It's been a long time. It just feels like this could potentially be the year.
And I picked a different team to win the AL West.
Love
I
it.
picked the Rangers, Mariners. And I'm just going to pick the bread and butter, who's always there, who always seems to come in the clutch, the Houston Astros. And I really do hate them, and I wish that they weren't good, but they are. And that's because they have players like Kyle Tucker, Yordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, who, although is disappointed, is still a pretty above-average third baseman. Players like Jeremy Pena, and then they do have the pitching. They just got Josh Hader this year to clean up at the end. They have guys like J.P. France, kind of underrated starting pitcher. They have Lance McCullers, Framber Valdez, Urquidy, Justin Verlander, coming off injury, but should be ready, mid-season, or maybe he's actually going to be okay, but he's older. But Hunter Brown, they have a lot of depth. And so it just feels like they're always there, and that's why I picked them. Let's go to it is fun, though, that we all picked a different team.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, actually.
Be a good one to revisit.
Let's go to the AL Central. Dog Millionaire, who you got?
Just kind of keep us moving here. I think we could dive deep on every team, but kind of call them the Brewers of the AL, the Twins. Got a lot of family in Minnesota. Love to see the Twins do well here. Really think Pablo Lopez is going to be quite outstanding there, and I think they just need to do enough with their pitching staff to piece together, and I think they have the bats there. Obviously guys like Royce Lewis there, and they just need guys to stay healthy like that, like Buxton, whatnot, Max Kepler, etc. So I like the Twins. I think they can figure it out and piece it together.
Can't spell twins without wins.
That's true.
Very true.
Yeah.
I'm also the Twins. My only hesitation is exactly what Brian just said, is their offensive stars staying healthy. And if they stay healthy, I think they're the best team in the division. I have nothing else to add on them. I think they're pretty solid across the board.
I picked Tigers. I like the Twins too, especially being from Eau Claire. Went to a lot of Twins games. They're fun to watch. I'm going to go Tigers because I just think that their offense will ascend. And they have enough pitching to do it. And I think they'll ascend this year. Let's go to the AL East. Frem, who did you got?
I don't think it's close. I know I think the Yankees should likely rival them, but Baltimore Orioles, without a doubt, I think they're going to be the best team in the AL, potentially, and maybe even baseball. And that's saying a lot because I do think the LA Dodgers will be, 100 plus win team. But yeah, I mean, guys like Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, we already talked about them in a previous podcast. They got Corbin Burns now, pitching staff, Grayson Rodriguez. The list goes on and on, right? But this team is stacked. They're loaded, and I expect them to be extremely, extremely good.
Yeah, I got the Orioles. I said a couple weeks ago, I think they're going to win the World Series. They're so loaded in the minors, too. They're guys that are ready to come up now. I think they could trade some of those guys, or at least one of them, for a big addition at the deadline. I think it's the Orioles. I think they win it by a couple games, and I'm still picking them to win the World Series.
Orioles all the way, baby. Such a fun team to watch. We talk about the Tigers having an ascending offense. Orioles are already there, and they're only getting better. It's exciting for them in Baltimore. And it is by far the best fan home experience. Let's get to the NL West. Frem, who you got?
It's the Dodgers, like I just said. I mean, you can't even really. I mean, yeah, you can go on and on, talk about their moves with Yamamoto and Ohtani and Glasnow, all the pieces they add. They still have the bets and Friedman. Kershaw's got to get healthy. Friedman, I call him Freeman. There we go, got his name right. Yeah, just kind of disgusting how much talent they have. I think they're gonna choke though in the NLCS, so it's okay. But they're definitely gonna be 100 plus win team there.
Yeah, I also have the Dodgers, but I will say the back half of their lineup is not that good. The top half is so good. When you talk about Betts, Ohtani, Freeman, and Will Smith, I mean, that's insane. But if you look at the back half, I'll just read it. Projected lineup: Muncy, Teoscar Hernandez, Outman, Hayward, Gavin Lux. It's okay. So I'm with you. I think they win the division, but I don't think they're good enough to win the World Series. I agree with that take.
Dodger Stadium's awesome, and I think part of me thinks this is a wrong pick, but I just don't want the Dodgers to win. So I picked the Padres, and the Padres could actually do it. Their top three in pitching is Dylan Cease, Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove. And I know people are down on Yu Darvish, but to me, that's a big three. And that's a very good top three. They also got Michael King and that trade of Juan Soto. And they always seem to find pitchers that, especially in their bullpen, that work. And they have a very good lineup still. Xander Bogaerts, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, a really young, exciting player named Jackson Merrill. They have a shot at doing some damage in the AL West.
I like that take.
Or NL West.
I like that take.
Yeah. NL Central, are we all unanimous here? The Chicago Cubs?
I don't want to be unanimous, but I just have to be realistic. And I don't want to pick the Cardinals. And I'm not going to be an unrealistic Brewers fan. So, yeah, I'm giving the Cubs a nod.
Yeah, we've already talked about the Cubs, but I'm flying the W this year. I think they get the division title. I don't think they go any further in that, but I think they win the division, and that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see players like Michael Busch. Excited to see what. I think I'm excited to see players like Ian Happ, if they even get a little bit better, ascend a little bit more. What kind of a year does Nico Horner put together? It's fun with Craig Counsell this year, man. It feels like expectations are high, and they should be, because we have the talent. We've put money into the team. Got Belly back. Feels like the Cubs. It's going to be their year in the Central, and then NL East. From Dog.
So this is probably the team that I want to talk about next to the Cubs, or maybe even more than the Cubs. The Atlanta Braves. I really hope they're in the World Series. Just a fun team. Guys like Michael Harris, obviously got Acuna Jr. And Matt Olson, whatnot. They're just stacked. Austin Riley. The list goes on and on. They added guys like Jared Kelenic to just all these different pieces they have going. They have Chris Sale, our fantasy baseball guru. How do you say his last name? We should call him the cousin.
We just call him the cousin.
Yeah. His hot take, I think we saw in our chat, is that Chris Sale is ready for the season, and he's going to be 100% here. So if Chris Sale is doing his thing, and if Strider can even come back and do somewhat of he did last year, they're going to be really good. They always have a really good bullpen too on top of it. So yeah, I just don't see anyone. I think that's who the Braves can take out the Dodgers, I think.
Yeah, Braves are the most talented team in baseball, up and down. Getting Chris Sale was huge to fill out that rotation. Spencer Strider is the best pitcher in baseball. They don't really have a weakness in their lineup. I do think the Phillies got a shot, but at the end of the day, the Braves are just too strong.
Yeah, man. I mean, those deals they got on Acuna and Ozymandias, I mean, it's just highway robbery. They've, in essence, locked up all their top guys on cheap contracts, and it's like, man, I think that all of baseball's wanting to try to do the same, and I don't. They got lucky in that way, and I think it's going to serve them well for the next 5 to 7 years. I mean, they definitely are going to win the East, and just even looking at the division top to bottom, the Mets are down. Marlins could be a little bit better, but they're always just not spending the same amount of cash as other teams are. And like you said, Phillies have a shot, but man, it just feels like the Braves top to bottom are so strong. Let's get to our award winners. We're going to go through MVPs, Cy Youngs, Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year. We'll start with you, Frem. Who is your AL MVP?
Talked a lot about him. Gunnar Henderson. I think he's the real deal coming up. I could go on and on about him, but I'll just leave it at that. He's really special. I think he's going to be one of the best players in baseball here the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, for me, it's the year of the J-Rod show. It's Julio Rodriguez. Like I said, the Mariners are going to win that division for the first time in who knows how many years. And he's going to be the anchor. He's going to potentially lead the league in homers. He's going to steal bags. He's just going to be electric. So, J-Rod.
For me, I'm going to pick, I love J-Rod, obviously, but I'm going to pick Juan Soto. He is the most overlooked superstar in the game. And I don't know if that's because he went to San Diego for a while. He got out of the East Coast bias media. No offense, East Coasters out there. But I'm going to go Juan Soto in Yankee Stadium. The thing about Julio Rodriguez, he strikes out a lot. Juan Soto does not. Takes a lot of walks. And so I could just see Juan Soto having an on-base percentage of 430. It wouldn't shock me. Especially I think he'll have better lineup around him. I think being in that New York scene on a contract year, I think that'll propel him a little bit further to the top. NL MVP, Fremdog, who you got?
Team of the night, just taking the easy way out. Shohei, he's just so good. And I hear you, what you're saying, Chris, on that lineup, but that bottom half of the lineup is still, some teams, 1 through 4. So they're just loaded, and they're just going to have crazy run production. He's going to have a amazing opportunity for RBIs. We know the guy can hit bombs. If he steals bases, he's not pitching this year, correct? Is that the word on the street? I don't know if I got the latest on that. So he doesn't even need to pitch, and he's still going to be the best player in the NL. So, dude's amazing.
Yeah, I'm taking Corbin Carroll for almost the same reason I'm taking Julio Rodriguez. I think both guys could go 40-40. Corbin Carroll blew up his rookie year. It's now year 2, which there is some concern with any player going to year 2. But I just think he's too good. I think the Diamondbacks, they just signed Jordan Montgomery today. They're going to be a good team, so I think they'll make the playoffs. And I think Carroll could anchor them. It's a stretch. I don't know if I'll actually win it, but for this purposes, I'm going to look back on it and say I picked Corbin Carroll.
I mean, he's legit. He's top 5 NL player. For me, it's Mookie Betts. And part of the hesitation I have is an age thing. He's 31 this year, but he was second last year, and he could have been first. I mean, he didn't start well. I think he starts better. He's in the LA life now. He knows what it's like to play in LA. And man, he just got better as the year went on last year. So I'm all in on Mookie Monster for NL MVP. And Shohei will have a good year, but I think he's always been a story, and he's not pitching this year. So I actually think that'll take away from his NL MVP bid, which is unfair, but I think it will be true for him. Cy Young in the AL, Fremington.
So Cy Young's, I have this guy's not as much of a dark horse. Already mentioned him, but I don't think he's getting maybe as enough attention as he deserves because he's in Minnesota. Pablo Lopez, really dominant last year. I think he's going to definitely lead that staff, lead that team, to a divisional championship there. So Pablo Lopez, I'm not going to get into too much about him right now, but I think he's one of the guys who can be consistent, and I think he's one of the guys that's going to stay healthy. I think that's the other trick about this. There's many talented pitchers out there, but we just saw Garrett Cole go down, right? And you mentioned Brian Rue, right? These guys just fall down like flies. And so I'm looking at who can actually stay healthy and sustain themselves and going with Pablo.
Yeah, so I'm taking Corbin Burns, best team in the AL. I think he's the best pitcher in the AL with Garrett Cole going down. So I'm just doubling down on good team, good player. He traditionally does stay healthy for the most part. I think he figures it out because he wants a big contract at the end of the year. So I think he's just going to go crazy with them.
For me, this one's a little out of left field and just feels like, looking at the options, it's kind of an interesting year with Garrett Cole going out in the AL. I'm going to go Luis Castillo, and it's partly what Brian said. Who can stay healthy? Castillo's a workhorse. I think he gave up 22 home runs last year, which isn't crazy high, but I think he lowers that this year. He got to 173 innings last year. I think he gets to 200. I think he stays healthy. So I'm going to go Luis Castillo, kind of a dark horse, a name that we all know in fantasy baseball circles because he has been a consistent pitcher in baseball for the last 5-6 years. So I'm going to go Luis Castillo. NL Cy Young.
So I'm right behind you coming out of left field there with mine here. I drafted him in fantasy baseball. I'm gonna ride this train here with Michael King, right? So I think Phil, you mentioned him right with the San Diego Padres and what they can do with pitchers there. They produced a Cy Young winner with Blake Snell last year. Really like what I see about Michael King. He's never done this in terms of workload, right? So this would all be new for him. But he's got some really great stuff. I think he showed the signs that he could do this at the end of last season. And so I think if he gets the opportunity and like we talk about health, obviously, I think he's going to be something special. And I like a guy coming out of nowhere to really surprise people.
Frem, you are the hot take guy of us three, and you just gave us the hottest take I think you've given on the podcast, and I like it. I like Michael King. I am not going to overthink this one. I'm taking Spencer Strider. I just need to read this because it's so ridiculous. Last year, he had 186 innings pitched and 281 strikeouts. He had a 3.86 ERA, which seems high, but his WHIP was a 109. Like it was just a lot of bad luck. I think he just absolutely dominates the NL and wins it going away because of just how good he is at striking guys out and not letting them put the ball in play.
Yeah, Michael King, man, that'd be awesome. That would actually be awesome.
It would be cool.
I'm going Strider as well. Everything Chris said. Man, starting pitchers right now, it's pretty volatile because a lot of them aren't getting through the third time through the order. Managers are starting to pull after 2 times through the order. So even getting quality starts from pitchers these days is tough, right? We still use it as a category in our league. So I'll go the one that seems to be the most consistent in Spencer Strider. AL Rookie of the Year.
AL Rookie of the Year, kind of got, yeah. I don't think there's many other guys that can really do it here. I think you got Wyatt Langford or Evan Carter or Aaron Carter if you want to talk about him more. But I got Evan Carter. I think he can smash, and I think he's going to be special.
Aaron's party. I'm taking Wyatt Langford. Wyatt Langford. He's going to hit in the middle of the order. He's a rookie, but he is a special bat. I've already talked about him. He's going to have a similar year to Corbin Carroll in terms of his production on that team. And they're obviously really good. So, Wyatt Langford.
I've talked about the Tigers. I drafted him in my fantasy draft. So I'm going to go with Colt Keith. Because why not? Plays on a young ascending team. Doesn't have the steals, so he's going to have to show some power. But he's a natural hitter. He'll hit for average, and I think he'll ascend faster than people think he will this year. NL Rookie of the Year.
So homer pick here all the way, but it's a good homer pick. Jackson Chourio, really excited. He's going to be on the opening day roster here. And hope he does some special things. Speed, power. Hope he overperforms. Go Brew Crew.
I agree. Jackson Chourio, they need him to be really good if they want to be competitive. And I just think the NL Rookie of the Year candidates are pretty weak. So he may struggle at times throughout the year, but I think consistently he'll be at the top.
For me, it's Yamamoto, pitcher for the Dodgers. Signed a $300+ million contract this year. One of the most hyped pitchers coming out of Japan. He seems special. I know he hasn't been amazing in spring training, just still getting used to the MLB chops. But like you said, pretty weak, in terms of NL Rookie of the Year. So I think Yamamoto will be up there, and I think he'll win it. Managers of the Year. This is always interesting. So this team has to obviously play well to some degree. AL Manager of the Year. What you guys got?
I got, no surprise, Brandon Hyde, Orioles. I think they're going to be amazing here, over 100 wins. So Brandon Hyde.
I'm tripling down on the Mariners and going Scott Service. So they're going to win the division. They're going to have the MVP and the Manager of the Year.
And I think I'm tripling up on the Tigers, which doesn't feel like a good move. But my Manager of the Year is going to be AJ Hinch. I don't know if they need to make the playoffs for him to win it, but I think they'll get there, and I think because of that, he'll win it. And then NL Manager of the Year. This one's the most fun.
Hate to say it, Craig Counsell. Yeah, going with the Cubbies. The fact they get there, I'm gonna give Craig some love here, and I don't know if I hope he wins it. I'm just predicting he'll win it. Let's say it that way.
Top 3 manager in baseball. Makes sense. Sure.
I can't wait for him to come to Milwaukee. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to try to go to that first game if I can figure out how.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Bob Melvin for the reasons I said. I think the Giants will be a playoff team, and that will be impressive, all things considered, with how tough that division is and how good the NL West and East are. So Bob Melvin for the Giants because they're going to make playoffs.
Well, and I went with my NL West winner, right? So I picked the Padres. So I have Mike Schilt winning it, former manager for the Cardinals. Kind of an interesting dude, but he's got a team where he could win it. So I think he'll be the manager of the year this year. That is our awards. We will look back at this and hopefully we'll be in joy because we were smart. But I think we'll look back at this and maybe laugh a little bit because it always goes differently than you think it will. Last thing we want to talk about is our fantasy baseball draft. We just had it. The performance enhancers. It's been the running league name for many years, many moons. Did you guys have a strategy going in? What was the strategy, and were you able to execute your strategy?
I'm going to give you my quick take, and then I'm going to jump into left field. So I'll let you guys wrap up here. But yeah, my strategy was to find some starting pitching because, you said it's volatile and people get injured. And so Chris and I need to make a trade. I don't have the time here to do it tonight, but I have 11, I think, starting pitchers right now. So I stacked up, found a lot of guys, found value, got some exciting guys with Tarek Skubal and Cole Ragans. Got some old dudes like Justin Verlander, Yu Darvish, whatnot. So had to load up there, and then tried to piece together the offense with some younger guys, or some guys that I felt like had at least a floor. Your Max Muncies or Christian Walkers, etc. I think guys like that. Not in love with the offense, but I'm hopeful about the pitching. Maybe I can make a couple moves here and be competitive. I'm gonna bounce, but I look forward to hearing what you all say. No, don't talk badly of me. Now you can make fun of my team to my face, but not behind my back.
Good night, from dog.
Peace
Love
out.
you, Frem.
Now
All right, so
two.
my strategy was so for those who don't know, this is a keeper league, so you can keep 3 players. You can't keep them for more than 2 consecutive years, otherwise they go back in the pool. But you can also trade up to 3 draft picks. So when you're in contention to win, you basically trade your first 3 picks to go for the win. So I won the league last year, so I went all in. I traded my first and second round pick. So really my goal with my first pick in the 3rd round was to just try to go for pure upside because I'm already a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of talent. So I took Wyatt Langford with my first pick, just hoping that he is the next kind of real deal. And then I just kept loading up on sort of young, up-and-coming players on offense. And the hope is that I can hit on a couple of them to maintain competitiveness there. I knew I was taking a gamble on pitching. I kept Spencer Strider, which is good. And I did draft Blake Snell, I think in the 5th round or 4th round, one of the 2. But other than that, I kind of punted on pitching. So as Phil said, it's volatile. But as good fantasy baseball managers know, pitching is sort of the one thing you can get as the season goes on, whether it's playing the wire, finding good relievers, making trades. I think you have to have a core foundation on offense to be competitive. So that was my goal. And then we'll figure out the pitching later.
Yeah, I think for me, I was also behind the 8 ball. My first pick was in the 4th round. I had traded my first 3 picks to get players and to get into the playoffs, which I was able to do. But yeah, I was definitely behind the 8 ball. Even my keepers weren't great. I mean, Julio obviously was great. But I kept Nolan Jones and Josh Hader. So good players, but, maybe around the 50, 60 mark. So it's not great keepers. So I'm also thinking upside. And so my first pick, the one I was most excited about, Tristan Casas. First baseman from the Red Sox. Just went off in the second half of the year. Seemed to figure it out. Chris was going to take him before he decided to take Blake Snell. because pitching is just, it was going like fire. I mean, everybody and their mother was picking pitching early because we had a lot of keepers that were hitters that people kept. And so, man, people are just going for pitching early. And so wanted to get Tristan Casas. I feel like my strategy was try to pick the best player. Sometimes I had to reach on pitching because there was so much pitching going off the board, and there was names I liked. But that was definitely the thing in my head, is just keep picking the best player as much as you possibly can. Not always trying to fill needs. Sometimes you have to do that based on how your lineup is. You know, you need a first baseman, you need a second baseman, you need a shortstop, that kind of thing. But I really try to do that as much as possible, which, you know, makes sense for fantasy drafts. But, you know, there's value in these later rounds, especially around position players in general. So there's different ways you can go with it. What is your biggest regret, Chris, in the draft?
So one might not be drafting Tristan Casas, because I did really want him, and I feel like that's one I'm just going to keep a really close eye on him this year. My other regret is I just was never in the right position to get the relievers I wanted. Like, there were relievers I had circled, like, get this guy if he's here. But every time it came to me, it felt like those guys in that tier were gone. So then I would pivot to more offense. So I'm really good at finding relievers. I think that's one of my strengths, but I definitely feel a little bit behind the eight ball with some of the guys I have. My other regret was not getting a good third starter. My third starter is Bryce Miller for Seattle, who I actually don't even think is that good. So yeah, pitching is gonna be rough.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, this happened 3 or 4 times where we're gonna pick a player. It's taken just the pick before me, and so you're scrambling. And a lot of times I had 2 guys, so I was kind of ready. But one, I was going to pick Jordan Walker. Frem, who has left us here, picked him. We were on a pitch clock, or we were on a time clock for the first time this year. You had to pick in a minute and a half, which was the right call. But I was just like, I don't know who I want, and ended up picking Ian Happ. And I love Ian Happ. Don't get me wrong. But where I picked him, how it came to fruition, it was not ideal. So probably went 30, 40 picks before he should have, honestly, which is, it's a little bit sad. And what I did follow is I followed the guy from The Athletic. I used his spreadsheet. I put in the numbers for our league. So I was trusting him and his work a little bit more, and he had Hap high. But if you look at ADP.
Derek Van Riper?
I think so, yeah.
So that's the guy that got me a job at RotoWire. Full circle, Phil. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. I have no idea where I'm going to finish in this league. I mean, but I was behind the 8 ball with, you know, keepers already a little bit. Chris, do you have a sense? Have you looked at the teams?
Not deeply. I mean, there are teams like my brother Matt had 9 players before I had 4. So there are teams that obviously kept or traded for high picks that are going to be in good shape. But at the end of the day, it's how you work your team throughout the year. We know that. And you have to know sort of when you can go all in or when you need to sell. I don't think there's ever a middle. You either sell or you go for it, which is what I like about this league. I think I could potentially sneak into the playoffs. I don't think I can win it, but I set myself up pretty well with Wyatt Langford, Evan Carter, and Jackson Holiday. So if my team tanks, I feel really good about those guys as potential keepers for next year.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird with me. I feel like I'm always middle of the pack. And I'm actually okay with that if I don't have my first 3 picks. You know, in terms of starters, it's going to depend on the pitching for me. I think my hitting's fine. It's the pitching. I like 2 of my starters, and then like Chris, I don't really have a good third one. So it's a bunch of darts, and you hope one strikes. I actually picked up Frankie Montas on waivers because Frankie Montas used to be very good, and then he got hurt. And then, so you're banking on some of those, or you're banking on, you know, rookies or guys that had really good starts to last year or had really good portions of the year and then kind of dropped off. So I bet I finish lower tier this year because of keeper situation, 9 of the 3 picks. how volatile pitching is. I'm always optimistic. I think fantasy baseball is so much more fun, I think, than fantasy football, because if you work on your team, pick up the right free agents, your tides can turn pretty quickly. But without looking, that's middle of the pack, lower middle feels okay. So,
have you thought about a team name yet?
I'm not there, but ideally I could use Casas. I will.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be a Spanish name this year. Could be a Spanish name this year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, thanks for listening. Enjoy the games this weekend. Baseball's coming on Thursday. Everybody loves opening day. We're going to be watching Fever pitch tomorrow. If you feel like you can join us in spirit, please do. Everybody loves some Drew Barrymore. And wait, who's the other actor?
Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon. What a stud. This is just me and Chris signing out from the Man Sports Fan Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Go Cubs, go.